think that the lost Polynesian generation is the generation of kids out here in the States who don't have the opportunity to be immersed in our culture and with our people every day. They don't speak the language, they don't know our traditions, and I think that as we carry on, like we passing those traditions down, and our lost generation is those kids who aren't getting them.
I think the lost poly generation refers to not just my generation, but even the generation before me of those who have kind of lost our culture. So you see like the loss of language, the loss of respect for our elders, but just as much as the loss of respect for one another. So you see the beefs that we have nowadays. And so to me, that's what it means. Like folks who have forgot what it meant to be, not just Polynesian, but like Pacific Islander. You know what I'm saying? And what our cultures embody and what it encompasses has been forgotten as we, I guess, migrated to the U.S.
So in high school, I went to a predominantly Caucasian school. So I was really the only Polynesian there. And you feel like, or I felt like, I didn't really belong with anybody. People would always be looking at me like I'm different, like I'm weird. They notice me, and not necessarily in a good way. I'm bigger than a lot of girls there. I'm darker than a lot of the people there, and it's uncomfortable. And I really didn't even see another Polynesian in person who wasn't a family member until I was a teenager. And to me, that I didn't even realize that what I felt like was missing turned out to be my culture.
One of the things I experienced in high school as a Samoan was, the sense of belonging. Like, I'm from Long Beach, and so, you're accustomed to seeing a whole bunch of us at school and just kicking it. So it's always fun, man, the sense of community, amongst us boys and just all the Pacific Islanders at school. But you also be exposed to the same elements that other people of color are exposed to. So, we knew about drugs and alcohol, substance abuse. We learned, we knew that all that stuff existed just as much as like gang banging and violence and things of that nature. Like we lost folks along the way. So those were some of the experiences we had. And I remember when I was a junior, this one Cambodian cat passed away, man. He was being chased by some other gang members, and he just passed away because he had asthma or something like that. And so it was like we constantly knew that type of stuff was happening. We knew like the beefs and the tensions that were between certain groups, such as like Samoans and Tongans and things like that. We knew that stuff was real just as much as it was with Mexicans and blacks. Other experiences I had, man, was like I don't think school faculty was necessarily competent. I don't think they knew how to address us as Pacific Islanders. Like we weren't the same as every other minority. There was things that made us different that they could have built upon to make sure that we succeeded, but instead kind of just try to do their best to either let us graduate or just, get along until we either drop out or we get kicked out. So I don't think that a lot of them knew how to handle Pacific Islanders. We one of the newest immigrants to this country, so in that case, those were some of the experiences I had. A lot of us were either going to OCS or being suspended. When I was in middle school, like some of my cousins, some of the homies was being sent to juvie. Like it was weird because we all kids still, but they was getting sent away back then. So it was kind of like just building upon that, school to prison pipeline and things like that. It started early on. Other experience I had in high school was like, again, just beefs between different neighborhoods, different people of color, and things like that. Just being so, I guess, socialized, and being taught that we're that much different from these other folks to where, we gotta have beef or we gotta go against one another. I never seen like Samoan faculty or like Pacific Islander faculty outside of Butch, like one dude, and that was it. And so, like, I think it's another thing, like, if there was more Pacific Islanders on campus to help us figure out how to go, how to behave, man, how to act, how to conduct ourselves, and teach us about the importance of education, the importance of our culture, like, that would have hella been fly, but we didn't have that experience. And so, we were just experienced high school in the city, just like any other people of color, with our own little twist because we were different.
Well, when I was 17, I moved away out of my family's house up in Washington, and I came down here to Southern California. and I moved in with extended family, with my dad's family, the Samoan, and it was culture shock. I wasn't raised far Samoan way. I didn't know the culture. I didn't know how anything worked, and it was like that. My aunties and uncles, they had me in it, and it was a struggle because I ended up going to a high school out here, and I thought that it was going to be different because I was in California. I was like, oh, there's going to be other brown kids, there's going to be other, minorities. But it turned out that in the high school I was at, I was, again, the only Pacific Islander there. So I wasn't necessarily the only brown kid, but I was the only Samoan. And so I turned out to be a minority in a whole other kind of way. And you face a lot of identity issues, who you belong with, where you should go, what you should do with your life. And it really wasn't until I got to college that I got to experience being around people who are like me and who have been through things like I've been through.
All right, some of the struggles that I dealt with growing up was just like as a family, you know what I'm saying? You can't tell your own story, your own struggles without telling your family. So some of the struggles that we went through was just, homelessness, dealing with the gang violence, your family being involved in gangs and things of that nature, drug abuse, substance abuse, anything like that. A bunch of my relatives was involved with that. I mean like close relatives. So, we grew up with that. And again, just being homeless and constantly living with other people. I'm saying never having a place to kind of establish yourself. Just the family dynamics, like my pops, he ruled our family with an iron fist, you feel me? So he was hardcore, just like any other Samoan dad in a way. And so, having that kind of dynamic growing up, and then my mom, I'm a mama's boy, so just having those two different dynamics at play and just trying to find my place in terms of how to conduct myself as a man, and also just like, there was things that was different, like I actually cared about other folks, and so how do I go about that? So just learning how to be me, and I think that's just a lifelong process, you constantly discover yourself and you find your identity, but those are some of the struggles. It's harder for a kid who's growing up in poverty, who was homeless, who's exposed to gang violence, substance abuse, domestic violence, and it's just like, how do you find your way in the midst of all that, and become successful? Things like going to college or, establishing a career. So those are some of the struggles, man. Other struggles was like, we lost a lot of people along the way. My brother passed away before I was born, so he was like the second oldest brother. He passed away, so like how that kind of played into just growing up, knowing that you had a brother that passed away was kind of weird. And so that's always been a special spot in my heart, just trying to figure out, man, like knowing his purpose here, that it was served, and how that's going to motivate me to make sure I do mine. And so those are some of the struggles, man, just dealing with stuff like that, growing up in these different neighborhoods, constantly moving. I went to like freaking 11 different schools, you feel me, growing up, just constantly moving, man, and how that plays into, a young kid trying to establish some sort of identity or some sort of foundation, you know what I mean? Another struggle, I think, was like not knowing my culture. So I'm Samoan, but I didn't know what it meant to be Samoan. You know what I mean? I just take a look around me, and so a lot of folks were scared of Samoans, you know what I'm saying? We big, and we play sports, and we're supposed to be tough, and so, you know what I'm saying? That's what I thought it meant, but not knowing fully what it meant, like not knowing the Fa Samoan, not knowing my language, not knowing these values that go hella deep, you know what I mean? And it really are the center of our entire relationships with other people. I didn't know all that stuff, and so, you know what I'm saying, when you look at my actions, it reflects my lack of knowledge. So that was a struggle too. Are we doing like struggling like now too? Or even now, man, like being at a university where you're like, out of 36,000, your people are only like 100 something deep, and you don't even see them like that. You know what I mean? And coming from a city where you're used to seeing everybody, you're used to seeing Samoans and Tongans, like you're used to that. And now being at this university, like I'm the only Pacific Islander, not just the only Polynesian, but the only Pacific Islander in my classes. It's weird, like, you know what I mean? Like there's no representation of us on campus, at least not enough. And so again, like just like I was saying with high schools and stuff, like some of the services that are offered aren't culturally appropriate. You know what I mean? So they don't understand what it's like to be literally the minority of the minority. You know what I mean? Trying to get your hustle on and get your education, but also dealing with the fact that you're the only face of your kind in this kind of space. And so that's some, one of the struggles I witnessed and experienced early on. Like I noticed that hella like right when I got into college. And so just continuing to do that now, continuing to try and educate our young people, man, on the importance of education and things like that, that's a struggle. You got to deal with the fact that these kids have been exposed and experienced the same things that you've experienced and been exposed to. And so trying to figure out how to create something positive out of that for them is a struggle, but I guess that's like a positive type of struggle.
In high school, they would treat me like, like the token brown kid. They'd make a racial comment, a joke, something that didn't even have anything to do with me, with my ethnicity. And then they'd look at me and, they'd wait for me to react. They'd wait for me to say something. They'd wait for me to be offended. And I'm like, why y'all looking at me? Like, I didn't understand that it's because I was different. That they thought, they looked at me like I represented every person who wasn't white. Or, every person who isn't Mexican. And it's a lot of pressure and it's confusing.
As like a Polynesian student in high school, I mean, it's kind of cool because even though we grew up knowing these racial lines and knowing like we were Samoan, they were Mexican, they were black, they were Asian, like we still, for those of us that grew up together, it was still cool. Like we're all good people, you feel me? But at the same time, there was still that tension, like of knowing, like, oh, you from this hood. And even though it's neighborhoods and gangs, it was still like racial. It was like, oh, this is a Mexican hood, that's a black hood, this is a Samoan hood, this is an Asian hood. So sometimes in that regards, like we was treated differently. Like we were treated just as any other enemy or somebody who appeared to be an enemy and things like that. But outside of that, man, like Mexicans and blacks and Asians, they was cool with us too. You feel me? Some of them understand that same struggle that we come from and things of that nature. So, I'm saying, that wasn't tripping too much about our differences, but again, when you're growing up in a city like this, you still get exposed to the fact that, folks of different ethnicities, different neighborhoods are still going to have beef with you, you feel me, if you're considered like an enemy, you know what I mean? That's the lesson.
Well, since being here and since being in Long Beach, and I've got to spend time with people, other Pacific Islanders, with my family, with friends, and I have this sense of pride that I never had before because I didn't know. Like I didn't know about my culture. I didn't know about my heritage, and being around other people who are like me, people who have been through the kind of things that I've been through, it makes me very proud. It makes me really proud, and I want to give that sense of pride and that feeling to other kids after me. I want to share my story with people, with other kids who have felt what I felt and not knowing where they belong and not knowing what they're capable of. And I want to be one of those people who can tell them that their story matters and that they're a part of something bigger than themselves.
How do I feel about representing my culture here in the States? I feel hella proud, like especially because, lately I've been learning my culture, and I've been learning our history and the things that Pacific Islanders have contributed to the world. So you learn about leaders like, Billy Hofer, Thomas Sese, Lawaki, Queen Stalote, Kako Bao. So you learn about these cats. Like we had intellectual people, man. We had people that were doing major things long before, these Western people, knew how to do things. So like, it's hella cool to represent that. And so wherever I go, you try to represent, whether it's just spreading some information, whether it's dancing, whether it's putting on events to raise awareness about our people and the issues that we face. So I feel hella proud when it comes to representing our culture. Not in some like boastful way, like my culture's better than yours, but it's in a way that it's my own culture, you feel me? So that's a part of me, so I'm hella gonna be proud to represent it just as much as I'm proud to represent my own family, or not necessarily the city I'm from, but things like that. And so that's the type of thing, that's the type of feeling I have when it comes to representing my culture, is, that sense of pride, because you have something special, you have something that a lot of folks don't have, and that makes us unique as a people. And so it grounds you, you know what I'm saying? It grounds you in terms of like, no matter how far you go, you always know where you come from. And that's just what's taught in our culture, things like that.
To me, being Polynesian is just being proud. being proud of who you are, being proud of where you came from, and it's just a strong sense of traditions. You know, Polynesians are people who have passed down traditions for thousands of years. When, you know, other civilizations, other groups of people have been lost, have completely lost their practices and their beliefs over time. But something that's so special about Polynesians and Pacific Islanders is that they hold on to that and they continue to pass it down, and that's something that needs to carry on, because it's so fulfilling and it gives people like me a purpose.
Poly, man, before I used to be proud to say like I'm Polynesian and I'm poly whoopie whoop, but when I learned about the history of, you know, that term and just, you know, the stuff that it surrounds, I'm hella against it because I'm not Polynesian, I'm Pacific Islander, you feel me? And that's because I'm inclusive of my Melanesian and my Micronesian brothers. So a lot of times when we talk about being poly or saying Polynesian or promoting poly this, poly that, we forget about our other Pacific Islander brothers and sisters. And so when you look around the world, like outside of the States, you see the support that our Micronesian and Melanesian brothers give us. And it's like, man, who are we to try and, you know what I mean, segregate ourselves from that group out here in the States? And so I understand growing up, like, predominantly Polynesians out here when it comes to Pacific Islander where we're at. But yeah, poly means it's just one group, right? And it was a derogatory term when it was given to us. And granted that, you know what I'm saying, it's become something positive for us. Like I said, man, I'm trying to be inclusive of all islanders, not just, you know, Samoans, Tongans, the Maori, you know, and other Polynesian groups. So, yeah, that's that, man.
I definitely present strength and pride, power, love, generosity. You know, I've never met a group of people or known a group of people who have each other's backs the way that Pacific Islanders do, the way that Polynesians do. In a sense that, you know, you just meet somebody and it's like instantly, it's like you know each other forever, and they got you and you know that. And that's something that I've always been proud about, being Pacific Islander.
I've also done a presentation about my ethnicity or my culture. I would focus definitely on the love that we have as a people, the sense of community that we have. We're always looking out for other people. It's not individualistic like it is out here in the States. It's all about, you know, your family, it's all about your community. So I'll definitely talk about that, the sense of respect that, you know, is to be taught. You know what I mean? Just not only respecting your elders, but also respecting your peers and even the younger folks. I would talk about the whole idea, like, again, with community, just like giving, always give it to your people, man. If you have it and they need it, give it. You know what I mean? No questions asked. I would also talk about our sense of pride in our culture, who we are, and really just being proud of our traditions, our customs, our you know, our fabrics, you know, how we dress. I would talk about our tattoos and stuff like that. Other characteristics I would talk about is, again, building on that whole characteristic of pride is like, you know, being driven to do something greater than yourself, you know what I mean? It's kind of like with the community thing. I'd also present about our beauty as a people, man. Pacific Islanders are beautiful people, you know what I'm saying? So I'll definitely talk about that, especially because I'm like the only Pacific Islander in class. I would present about the way how smart we were, how intelligent we were as a people. You know what I mean? Being out there in the waters way back in the day before any modern technology, you know what I'm saying, even before a compass, and how we were able to navigate the waters by, you know, animals, by using the stars, by knowing the ocean swells, and like just patterns with where, you know, birds were flying to or flying from. So we were some super intelligent people, man. And I would also present about, I don't know, the beauty of our islands. It is beautiful, man. I would also want to present about the lifestyle. Like out there in the islands, from what I hear is different. It's slower than it is out here in the States. And it's cool, it's just hella chill. You know what I mean? Compared to out here, you know, like I said, just the whole individualistic mindset that we're taught to have, you know what I'm saying, keeps us on a fast track. You know what I'm saying? Has our pace hella fast, you know what I'm saying? So we forget about a lot of things in life that actually matter, you know what I'm saying? Such as family and things like that. Like in our culture, man, we hella pride ourselves in looking out for one another, being there for one another, supporting one another, encouraging one another. And that's something that is just hella beautiful, I think, about our people. And that's it. That's all I know.